Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Luna Llena. And Luna Llena has a question in reference to an earlier vlog on the subject of ancestor offerings. In that earlier vlog, I listed a number of possible ancestor offerings, and one of them was flour. And Luna asks, why flour? And the answer to this is that flour represents physical sustenance. It represents food, it represents, physical sustenance. And it is often offered, in my experience, together with water to represent food and drink, sometimes with salt to represent, again, food in general, sustenance, and sometimes just by itself. And it also is a reference to the bounty of the earth. So these are reasons why flour might be chosen as an ancestor offering, and in some cultures it's a very traditional one. But it is because of what it represents, not what it is. And when we talk about offerings to deities or to ancestors, obviously they don't need the physical substance. If you are offering an ancestor a small cup of flour, they obviously don't need that physical sustenance to survive, and if they did, that cup of flour wouldn't do them much good. Obviously, it's what it represents, and in particular, the respect and the building of the relationship which it represents. So I would say to you that when you make an offering to an ancestor, to a spirit guide, to a deity, what you're really doing is you're offering a part of yourself, your respect, your veneration, and you are building the relationship. It isn't actually the substance that's important. And I would say that we can see this in traditional cultures as well. And I would use the example of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was very big on offerings to deities and ancestors, and in major temples, the offerings were quite lavish, and the money to pay for them was built up over generations. And individuals would often endow temples. And I use the term money in a loose sense because for most of what we think of as Egyptian history, they did not have cash money, but they had items of exchange. And prominent people would often deed a temple a field or a farm to provide for their afterlife offerings. And every day in major temples, those offerings began early in the day when the offerings would be made to the patron deity of the temple. And they would stay there for a while, and then they would be taken to the lesser deities associated with the temple who might have shrines or chapels as part of the larger temple complex and were related to the patron deity. Then they would be taken to the ancestors who had made that kind of endowment to the temple so that they would receive offerings in perpetuity. And so on through the day until eventually they were presented to the priesthood and the staff of the temple who consumed them. And this is generally the fate of this kind of offering in most of the world's religions who have practiced it. It ends up being eaten after the deity or spirit has taken the part that it benefits from, which is not considered to be the physical item. And obviously they cannot have felt that it was the physical item if they repeatedly offered it through the day to different aspects of temple deities, to ancestors, and ultimately to the priesthood. It was an aspect of the offering which was important rather than the physical substance. And I would say that this is how we look at it today, at least in my background. And again, what you're really offering is your respect, your gesture of veneration, and your building of the relationship. The actual substance is much less important. Unless you come from a particular background where a particular substance is required, it's really a matter of choice. And it can be as simple as lighting a candle or even just giving your attention. It doesn't really matter that much what the offering is. It's the gesture of making it. And again, flour is a very traditional offering in some backgrounds because it represents the bounty of the earth, physical sustenance. But again, the spirit itself obviously does not require physical sustenance. That is not the reason for making the offering. So those would be my thoughts on the matter. I hope you find them helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be.
Ancestors. Ancestors are spirits of people who have helped to shape us into who we are. Commonly, these are deceased family members, and it is in this way that the term is primarily used. But ancestors need not necessarily be people to whom we are related by blood. A deceased person who helped us in some important way, or whom we particularly admire, may also be considered an ancestor. Sometimes a historical personage to whom we are drawn, perhaps because of a past life connection of which we may or may not be conscious, will be considered an ancestor. Ancestors are the spirits we honor as being fundamental to the development of our character, and to whom we have a strong psychic bond. Often they will act as spirit guides to us, advising and aiding us as we go through life. Ancestors should be acknowledged and honored regularly to strengthen the bond between us and them.